Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Road to Imaging USA live series. Today, we're chatting with an incredible educator, fashion and commercial photographer, and an expert of lighting, among many other things. Welcome to the studio, John Gress. Hi there.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You're too kind.
Hi. Happy Monday. How's it going so
Yes.
far?
Pretty good. I can't complain. I was just doing some experiments in the studio this morning, trying out different beauty dishes and kind of seeing how they work and learning from that. And that's one of the good things I love about what I'm usually doing with photography is I'm usually trying to try out new things and learn from that process. So I'm
Can you
always
say that again?
exploring different.
Beauty
Yeah. So
dishes.
I'm Yes, so I was testing out different beauty dishes this morning, silver and white in different sizes, just to see sort of how they shape and control light. So I could learn from my experiment this morning and take that information and then use it on my next shoot. So it was fun just sort of to test things forensically in the studio, and it gave me all sorts of ideas on how I could use that information later this week when I actually do a shoot. And I think that's one of the things I've been loving most about photography over the last few years as I've been making more educational materials, is that in order to do that, I sort of have to test things out and make sure that I know exactly what I'm saying before I do it. And through the course of doing that, it causes me to learn more information and change the way that I think and approach things differently. And that's sort of some of the things that I love, then taking that information and sharing it with others. And some of that is what I'll be doing at imaging this year during my pre-con class.
Oh, that's amazing. At first I was like, "Did he say beauty dishes?" Like, I had to kinda conceptualize what that meant, what that looked like. That's awesome. I really appreciate that quality about you, which is your, just endless interest in, what is new in the photography world. Um, I'm curious too, as a, creator and as someone who uses Instagram and kind of notices the trends and what's going on and what people like, um, do you do you use that, like, do you allow yourself to explore your creativity in a field that you don't have as much, like, background in? And do your followers find that interesting, or do you kinda stick to the same, like, what you're known for, fashion and commercial photography? Or yeah, just curious how you step
Well,
outside.
it's very interesting when I do step outside of the box. It
Uh-huh.
People don't always take it so well. So, for instance, I've been going around teaching my workshops. I met my friend Deanna Robles, and she teaches maternity workshops. And we decided that we would start traveling around together so that each teach a workshop in the same city on the same weekend so we can hang out together. So she goes on Saturday and I help her, and then I go on Sunday and she helps me. And through that
Nice.
process, I've started to shoot some maternity photos. And then it's rather interesting when I share those because at first, when I would post one, I would lose like 200 followers in the same day. And then finally, I think I got to my third or fourth post this week, and that post actually worked out pretty well. But before, when I would shoot events and that sort of thing, and I would post that into my feed, it would go terribly. And so I just stopped posting it. And then over time, I stopped shooting that sort of thing as well. So I try to keep things pretty
Okay.
narrowly focused.
Mhm.
Lately, I've been experimenting using a mid journey in order to make backgrounds that I'm then using for composites. And that's has sort of had some mixed results as well.
Mhm.
Of course, there have been some troll comments where they've said, oh, I thought you were a real photographer or something like that. And I think these are probably the same people that are shaking their fist at the future, saying that,
Mhm.
they just want to keep doing the exact same thing the exact same way the whole time. But I feel like I want to try to learn these new things so that I can start to master them. I'm not very good, let's say, at making composites or this whole process, but at least I'm learning from doing it and
Mhm.
sharing a little bit of that as well with people along the way.
That's beautiful, and with Midjourney, you're able to input your own photographs too, right? And to prompt the AI to kind of from there, um, do more with it. If I'm correct, I think I'm thinking of the right program, right?
Well, so you can use a picture as part of your prompt, and you could say something like, I would like a high school football player photographed full body, um, standing facing the camera in a stadium that looks like this. And then you
Mhm.
include a URL of the stadium picture that you have for your inspiration. And then you can include more keywords. And then it will spit you out something that's inspired by that link that you sent it. But it's interesting, even when you say, like, I was trying to find a picture from a basketball court that was shot from the sideline so that I could put in there a photo of someone dunking the ball who was pretending that the basket was on my right. And so as I was trying to get Midjourney like to recreate a photo, I fed it a photo like that, and then
Mhm.
it it created a photo from a different place on the court. So it's interesting that even though you can like spoon feed it something, it still doesn't quite listen to you all of the time, and sort of does its
Yeah.
own thing. But at least it's a little bit inspired by what you're feeding it.
I like that you're experimenting. I think it's worth, I think there's a lot of value. I know we talked briefly about AI, on our chat earlier. There's tons of new software that cuts out all of this editing work that photographers might have spent many, many hours in the past removing all the freckles from a model's face or blemishes and acne. And we talked a little bit about, obviously the ethics or the the jobs that are going to be lost in this process. Um, just kind of curious, if you could say anything more to that. I feel like it's like what's the word, that it's a territory that can get a little bit polarizing, obviously, but it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. With the retouching, as far as that's concerned, like you can probably there are some images that it works really well on, and it takes care of almost all of the problems that exist there. And then there are some images that it doesn't do so well on. So it's
Yeah.
interesting if you need to extend the background, or you need to take things out of the background, or you have a person with a lot of freckles, it doesn't necessarily, if they have freckles and blemishes, it's going to be very hard for the AI right now to remove the blemishes without removing the freckles. And that can look kind of crazy really fast. Although it is interesting, the AI can now, as of last month, in the software that I've been using, it can take away flyaways and
Mhm.
touch up people's hair, and it does a pretty good job at doing that. I actually just this week bought um, a giant, like 5 by 7 foot collapsible reflector, like we would use to reflect light back. Only I got it's the same idea as that. Only it's green on one side, green screen on one side, and blue screen on the other. And I got that with the intent that I'm going to experiment using that as my background on some headshots, and then see if it helps the AI figure out what the background is even better than it can do now, because sometimes now it has
Mhm.
difficulty, especially if your background is gray and then you have some highlights on a person's face, like let's say that there's an edge light, and then all of a sudden it might think that the skin on their neck is the same luminance as the background, and now they think the skin on their neck is part of the background, so it takes it away. So hopefully maybe using this
Scary.
green screen reflector will help doing that. But it's just interesting as you start to maybe adapt and learn, like, what things can AI take care of for you, what things is it not so good at, and then maybe make a change, like maybe using a green screen in
Mhm.
order to make facilitate the process. So
Interesting.
but mostly for photographers, the good thing is that um, these situations where you would have to select your subject and mask them out and put them on something else, well, that would have taken quite a bit of time, 3 or 4 years ago. Now that can happen almost instantaneously. It's not always great, but it can happen pretty quickly. And as far as like removing blemishes when there are freckles, um,
Mhm.
yeah, that process might have taken 10 or 15 minutes, and now you can do it with a slider in a few seconds. So all of these things are just going to help us do our job a little bit better. and let
Mhm.
us focus on other things like maybe um, perfecting the content that we're putting into the shot and
Yeah.
capturing rather than maybe spending a lot of time afterwards
Yeah.
trying to polish our
Post-production.
images.
Oh, interesting. And, someone in the comments asked, I think it's AI related. Hi, John. What do you suggest for new photographers trying to find their way in all of this? Um, that's a big that's a big question for AI. Do you have any brief words on that?
Well, as far as AI retouching goes, it's kind of the same rules that we might have thought about before with retouching by hand. Just because
Mhm.
you are capable of making someone look 15 years younger doesn't mean that you necessarily should do it. So
Yeah.
it's just going to be a matter of finding out like what looks natural without going too far. And so less will be
Mhm.
more with the AI retouching, just like it would have been with hand retouching.
Mhm.
And then as far as using AI to make imagery or using AI to make background imagery, I still feel like you're way better off if you can create the image for real in the camera to do it that way. But maybe in some instances, there's no way for you to do that. And so it's just going to give us an opportunity to try and make images happen that couldn't have happened otherwise. And so um,
I
that is
like that.
a really good thing about the technology right now with me making these AI background sports composites that I've been testing out. It is taking me 2 to 3 hours per image to come up with an idea, try to get the AI to give me an image that I can use, and then to actually physically mask out a person and put them in that scene and change the lighting and all of those things. Whereas I could have shot the picture for real in 10 minutes, well, time on set, not.
Yeah.
I would have spent 2 hours getting the lighting set up and taking it down and photographing the person anyway. It just would have been better had I did that on location with the real background rather than trying to fake a background. So
Yeah.
it's like just because these things are capable of doing things doesn't necessarily mean that it should be the first thing we reach for when it comes time to figuring things out. And I think that there's a lot of uh, even when you're creating fake AI imagery, you still need to have probably an appreciation for lighting and composition, like you would if you were working in the studio or on location. And so honing those skills are probably still going to be important, regardless of if 5 years from now we're not actually pushing a button and we're
Yeah.
working at a computer. Hopefully not.
I appreciate that answer. I think that's a really solid answer to that question. Just to kind of start from the top a little bit too for the people that don't know you. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about how you got your start. I know in the photo education sphere, like kind of circa 2019, Gary Hughes, namely.
Yeah, so I'll step back a little bit further. I started off my photography career as a photojournalist, and I worked as at a daily newspaper, and I also worked for the two largest international news services as a full-time freelancer at different points in my career. And so I would do everything from cover presidential politics to major sporting events like the Super Bowl and even average run of the mill professional sports events as well.
Mhm.
And so I did that through probably about 2010. That's probably when that started to fade away. It's only because what was happening was that the newspaper business was starting to fall off as we went into that late 2000s period into the early teens. And so as that was falling off, and a number of magazines got taken out during the Great Recession, my work in that field started to fall off as well. And so then what was happening was that my commercial work and portraits of people was increasing at the same time. And so those two things sort of passed like ships in the night. And throughout the mid 2000s, I was working primarily as a commercial photographer in the beauty industry. My friend talked me getting onto Instagram, even though I was reluctant. And because of me getting on Instagram, then all of a sudden, I had a lot of people following me who were photographers, including Gary Hughes, who's also one of the speakers this year. And he suggested to Angela Kirkian in 2019 that I be a fill in for someone who had to cancel being a pre-con speaker. And so that was my very first time speaking in front of an audience of people per se. Leading up to that, I decided that, well, I better start teaching workshops because I need to practice before I get in front of a group of 50 people and make a fool of myself. And people had also been asking me repeatedly to start teaching workshops. And so that was sort of the catalyst for me to really get into educating. And so since that time in 2019, I have taught hundreds of people all over the US, both in conferences and also in my own workshops, and then on my online learning platform, the Academy with John Gress, and then of
Mhm.
course, then there's YouTube and all of these other things that have sort of happened over time. And actually, doing YouTube was just so that I could um, feel like I wanted people to be able to relate to me as a person, not just pictures that I took, because up to that point, I really was just sharing my work and not much else. And so it's really quite a privilege to get to share with other people the things that I've learned over time, because I really hope that I can help them sort of teleport forward and not have to go through as much trial and error as I had to go through over the course of my career. Because when I started off doing using lighting in 2000, let's say 1999, there were no blogs or YouTube or any other behind the scenes imagery. I just sort of had to figure it out. And so I'm really grateful that I get an opportunity now where I can help other people figure it out. Hopefully, they can achieve
Mhm.
what they're looking to achieve a lot faster than it took me to get to where I am today.
That's beautiful. That's
Oh,
really
thank you.
beautiful. Yeah, that's like the words of a true, like, educator. They who cares about their students, who cares about others. When you're, with, commercial photography and fashion photography, this class of yours, Lighting Unleashed, creating jaw-dropping images, would you say this is a class for commercial and fashion photographers only, or can everyone benefit from this class? Tell us a little more,
Yeah,
please.
no, it's really going to be about I'm really going to be teaching different portrait lighting setups that can work for whether or not you're a senior photographer or a fashion photographer or a business headshot photographer. It really doesn't matter what genre you're coming from because this is the fashion idea is just sort of an avenue for us to enter into the topic. And I think the lighting that I'll be teaching will be things that people can use in different genres, regardless of the type of work that they're interested in doing. What I'm really hoping for is not only to teach people the specific setups that I'm going to be going over, but more so to help people maybe think about how they might approach a situation differently in the
Mhm,
future, the next time that they're faced with a problem that they have to solve. Because as photographers, that's really what we're doing all of the time, is just having an idea and then figuring out how to go from that to the finished image. And that's sort of what I want to help people. I want to facilitate that process. And so I think regardless of whether or not you are into fashion photography, you could benefit from the pre-con class.
mhm. It's about those skills almost aligning with your artistic vision, like being able to actualize, what you're imagining. Um, I 'cause, earlier you said lighting doesn't care what the object is. I thought that was really cute, like, lighting doesn't care, it's just lighting. It's what you do with it. Um, and you also said, rather than, getting my students to copy my lighting setups, I can and kind of fill it in for me, like, rather than, encouraging students to copy what lighting setups you're teaching in your class, what are you hoping people walk away with?
Oh, I don't. Well, I guess to not get the wrong impression, I don't mind when people copy the lighting setups
Yeah.
exactly. I'm just hoping that they could, that it can be a catalyst for the next idea that they have and the next thing that they want to get through, because maybe there's something from this setup that will help and something from that setup that will help, and they can blend those two things together and
Mm,
then get to the image that they're hoping to create the next time they have a shoot. So it
mhm.
can be both. It can be both. Here's this setup, you can now do this exact thing and you can do this with your clients, and that can help facilitate the process. Or it could be that you bring a couple of things together and blend them into something else. So that's what I'm hoping
Yes.
people will take away from the class.
Okay, that makes total sense. You're kind of
Okay, good.
widen your repertoire, be able to kind of work on the fly more so with these setups and newfound wisdom from this class. I think it's gonna be awesome. Um,
Great.
is this is a pre-con class, or is this a general session class that everybody can attend?
Yeah, it is a pre-con class, so there are
Mhm,
two of them on the same day.
mhm.
And now I can't remember if it's the 26th or 27th, but
Good
maybe you can
question.
help with that.
So down in the I think down below in the chat, we'll have links for everything. So if you're curious about this class, there's probably still time to check it out. If you want to check this class out at Imaging, it is highly worth it. Um, I was noticing a couple questions in the chat. One was really cute. Um, Leanne writes, "What do you look for to create an iconic shot?" I'm curious how you'd respond to that one. Creating
That
an
is a fun
iconic
one.
shot. It's probably vague, but I liked it.
I kind of think you just keep trying new things over and over and over again. And
Uh-huh.
eventually you end up doing something that you haven't done before and really hitting that pinnacle. It's always been more
Oh,
for me about just getting out there and shooting different things and trying different things. And then every now and again, there's some great breakthrough that happens that I'm not expecting. And so it's really more about practicing and using that practice to sort of hone your skills. And then eventually just something pops up and surprises you. And that's sort of when you get that iconic image.
when you when you, like, go through the photos that you've taken for a shoot, do you have, like, moments where you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it turned out that way," or are you not surprised by how amazing your work is? Or, like, what's it like being you and kinda going through the photos that you've taken? Like, are you pleasantly surprised?
Well, I'm pretty indecisive when it comes to
Okay.
judging my own work. What I usually do is I start at the very last picture that I took from that look, and then I go backwards because I feel like I'm probably going to get the photo at that in the end, not at the
Mhm.
beginning, although it doesn't always work out
Oh.
that way. What ends up happening is that I end up paring down the images to probably around, um, let's say if I have a three look shoot, maybe I'll get that down to, well, no, more specifically, I probably get most of my looks down to about 5 images, let's say, from that look. And then what I'll do is I'll send that to about 8 or so friends who I annoy by asking them to tell me their 2 favorites. And then I start to tally what people are saying. And that usually guides me towards the final image that I'm going to go with. Sometimes the image really does jump off the screen to me and stop me, and I know that's the picture. But a lot of times it's sort of incremental, and a lot of times I also don't really know what I have until I share it. And then I kind of see what the reaction is.
Mhm.
Sometimes, though, I will come up with an idea or something that I want to execute from an inspiration image that I found that I've never done before. And then I do create the image and I am blown away by it, but that doesn't happen very often. Usually it's just that I'm uh, trying something new that day and mixing it up a little bit, and I'm not really sure if I like it or it's great or bad or average, and then I just kind of learn by seeing how people react to it.
Do you ever, I'm curious kind of as as a creative, and as also as someone who gets paid to do the work that you do you make time to, like, go out of your way and, like, hire a model to practice some new idea ever? Or yeah, I'm just kinda curious, is do you play have time that's, like, strictly for playing and, experimenting?
Yeah, and I just want to step back for 1 second, and then
Mhm.
I'll answer that.
Yeah.
I still fail when I go out there and try new things. And I have to not I think a lot of people are afraid to fail because but failure is part of the process. We all have in our head sometimes that we have a great idea that we want to execute, and we think it's a great idea, and we create the picture, and sometimes we think the image is better than it is. But that failure is all part of the process. And sometimes you're not going to look your best. And sometimes you're going to put something out there and people are going to go, what is that? But that's all part of the process. It's just sort of um, learning and realizing that. And that's the good thing is I always constantly, one of the good things I feel it's a good skill to have is to just stay humble a lot of the time and realize that you don't have all the answers and you're just trying things out like everybody else. And don't be afraid to fail. When it comes to practicing, the way that I've really grown my skills over time is to do these test shoots. And so, starting in 2008 during the housing recession, that's when I first started photographing models. And what I would do is I would find 2 to 3 models on a website called Model Mayhem back then, and I would
Uh-huh.
line them up in the same day, about 3 hours apart. And I would do the shoot with them where everybody was working for free, and I was providing them with pictures, and I was learning from the process, and they were getting pictures for their portfolio, and I of course was
Mhm.
getting pictures for my portfolio as well. Over
Mhm.
time I started to not do that so much, and then when I got on Instagram and I ran out of content to post in about 2015 or 16, that's when I started doing it again. So I would do about 2 test shoots a week, or maybe 1 test shoot a week at that time with people that I found on Instagram. And I would just look at people, I would just find people by following other photographers in my area or
Mhm.
looking at hashtags that were germane to my location. So that might be Chicago models or Chicago models. But for you, it might be ATL model.
Mhm.
That might be, or it could be ATL models. One of those two is the most popular one
Yeah.
in Atlanta. So just looking at those hashtags and finding people. And then what I would
Mhm.
do is I would bookmark people that I liked. And then when
Mhm.
I had a shoot that matched the people that I had in my bookmarks, I would reach out to them and I would ask them if they'd want to do an unpaid test shoot sometimes. Because I was trying to perfect a new idea. And I did that because about 30% of the time when I wasn't upfront about it, they thought that I should pay them. And 10% of the time, they thought that I was trying to hustle them and get them to pay me. So I just made things very clear from the start. And I still kept on with that
Mhm.
idea of scheduling those shoots about 3 hours apart. That way, if they didn't show up, or well, yeah, if they didn't show
Yeah.
up, then I would just start late or end early, and I would have 2 of them lined up in the same day. And
Mhm.
so I would do the same thing with fashion stylists and hairstylists and makeup artists. It would just be a great opportunity for us to all come together and try to create some content and to practice. And my practice time has sort of fallen off a little bit over the last few years. Mostly what I'm doing now is finding people in order to work through an idea that I have for YouTube, and then um, and then that's how I'm experimenting and I'm learning things that way. But I don't think
Mhm.
you need to go out there and hire a model in order to work on your photography because there's a lot of people all the time trying to get into modeling or
Yeah.
trying to get into acting that need photos. And it will be
Truly.
hard at first to get them to respond because if you don't have the work, they might not respond back. But
Yeah.
just know that people don't respond to me, so don't take any of that personally.
Too personally. I love that answer. I think that's those are all great, great starting points for people. And man, if you live in a city like Atlanta, there are so many people that want photos taken that are, starting out in their acting career or modeling. There's a great question from Will in the chat. He asks, "What is the hardest part of being an educator?" How would you answer that, John?
Well, at first, the hardest part was being comfortable with failing in front of people
Hmm.
because it was very difficult for me at first to be working in different studio environments because sometimes it would be a giant white room and sometimes it would be a small black room and
Hmm.
sometimes it would be a small white room. And I'd have to try to figure out things in order to make the idea that I had in my head work for that space. Over time, it got a lot easier. At the beginning, it was very difficult and overwhelming for me to be interacting with more than about 8 people. And now it's fine. You could throw as many people at me as you want. The same thing probably goes with speaking on stage.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
probably was a little tepid about it. And then I think at imaging one year, I had about 800 people in the audience. And now I wouldn't care how big the audience was. It's just because
Yeah.
I've done it and it works out okay and you're fine. So just getting over those sort of insecurities is probably the hardest thing at first. The other thing you sort of learn over time is you sort of learn how to phrase things for people because you will get asked the same questions over and over and over again. And every one of those times is another opportunity for you to practice the
Mhm.
answer. So it's interesting because you start off learning photography and doing things your way, and after you've done it for a while you forgot the crucial thing that you need to know to share with someone because it was so long ago that you did it. And so that was one of the things that I had to learn um, over time as I was teaching, sort of what is that thing that the people really need to know, that I need to make sure that
Mm,
they get and they understand. So all of those things are sort of an evolution.
yeah.
Being able to teach people is really just a pleasure and an honor, and I'm so glad that I get to do it because it really means a lot to me to help other people advance in their work, because I always wanted to have someone do that for me, but I never had, as far as lighting goes, I never had a photography mentor like that. So I'm really glad that I get to be that person for others.
Mhm. It's so interesting you just said mentor. Someone in the chat asked, "Can you name one of your mentors?" Did, uh, did you have any mentors though, like, kind of in getting into this
Yeah,
business?
so when I knew that I wanted to be a photojournalist, I started taking photography classes in high school.
Mhm.
And my high school photography teacher was a freelancer for the Associated Press. And he introduced me to the people that were the full-time photographers at the Associated Press. And they decided to sort of take me on under their wing when I was only 18 years old. And so through college, I worked with them on a part-time basis, and they were helping and guiding me to get better, and I was doing it sort of a trial by fire. So we would go out and we would cover events, and they would sort of tell me, what things I could do better, and where I should be, and what sort of things I could think about, and
Mhm.
to do differently next time. And that was probably way better for me than going to school for photojournalism, which was my original plan. So having those mentors really helped out. When it came to lighting, though, I started off experimenting with lighting when I was already a working full-time photojournalist, because you would always need to photograph people that were in the news for one reason or another. And many photographers would just pose that person next to a window, but I always loved doing things that were complicated, that involved a lot of stuff. And so all of a sudden I could now explore lighting, and I could use all these new gadgets and try doing different things that way. So a lot of what I learned with lighting over time was just all experimental, and
Mhm.
through those experiments is how I learned to use it more correctly. So
Mm,
having those mentors, though, when I was in college, were really key. And I
mhm.
actually got to have coffee last year with my high school photography teacher and his wife, and
Amazing.
I was just really glad to see them because, of course,
Aw.
without him and him dedicating his life to teaching people, I wouldn't have got to where I am now.
Yeah, we are so grateful for all the educators in our lives. They really make us who we are. And they I what I appreciate so much about these teachers in our lives is they will make us aware of talents that we maybe didn't even see we had in ourselves and encourage us. And that is so special. Um, one more question that I thought was really great. Someone wrote, I'm curious to what your approach is when you're feeling creator's block or burnout. I think that's a
I
great
feel like
one.
I did feel that recently, but it's been a while.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm always seeing things, usually on Instagram, that I'm bookmarking, and they're ideas that I want to try. And I'm
Mhm.
always coming across more and more and more ideas. So you never know. I can never accomplish them all. So
Yeah.
I just feel like I don't end up in that um, burnout situation um, because I'm always trying to tackle something new. I'm not just in the trenches producing the same thing over and over again. So
Mhm.
maybe that's what helps me stay out of that situation. Always trying to evolve.
Do you make time for rest in your life? You must be a busy person.
I decided lately that I have to stop working on the weekends at noon. So um, I don't know. It's hard to stop working when you sort of love what you're doing,
Yeah.
and there's always something more to explore and try and perfect. And so I'm always finding myself um, working on those things. So
Yeah.
um,
A true
and then I
innovator.
end up going on vacation usually every year or so. So I do take some downtime, but I should probably take more downtime.
Rest is good. We need to like give ourselves time to like fill that creative well, and so we have something to draw, draw back from. But I think we could keep talking forever. There's so many great questions that have come through, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Um, I just want to remind everyone at home that this is our last day for early bird registration for imaging. So if you want to save $50 and you want to spend that $50 some other way, you should sign up now for an all access pass. And you should register for this pre-con because it's going to be amazing. I wish I could take it. I'm going to be running around doing social media, but I am so thrilled to have been able to chat with you, John. Is there anything else you'd like to plug going on in your life? Or
Well, I think I would like to plug going to imaging. I didn't even know imaging existed until I got asked to speak there in 2019 because I didn't come up through the PPA system, if you will. And I had no idea that this event existed where there were thousands of photographers coming together in order to meet and share ideas and check out the latest gear. But what I feel like what's missing from that statement is it's a great opportunity to make friends. And now, after going to imaging, I think 5 times, I feel like I have a whole crew of people that I know and love from all over the country who I get to see every year and have a reunion with. And these are always great people that you can bounce ideas off of or talk through a problem with when there's something that is getting you down. Because a lot of the time as solopreneurs, we don't have someone to talk to, and going to a conference is a great opportunity to meet new people and find those friends who can really help you through the process.
absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your Monday. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm so grateful again.
Oh
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, goodbye, everybody. Tune in to our next one. We'll see you there. Bye.